What you guys, got another PC build here for you. A friend of mine called Tony, who's on our Discord server, he was looking for a computer for his wife called Claire. This is his YouTube channel here, Welsh Tony Unboxing. If you haven't checked it out, nip over there and give it a little subscribe. But anyway, these are the parts that we chose for his budget build. It's a SaharaGaming C500B, and that's what we're going to be using in this build. And also what we're going to be using is the MSI A320M-A Pro motherboard, which is around about £42.98. Of course, this is just an entry-level type motherboard, but it would be ideal for the AMD Ryzen 3 3200G, and that's what we're going to be using in this build. It's going to be using the onboard graphics, and that is £77.98. For the RAM, we went with 16 gigabytes of DDR4 3200 MHz speed, and it's the Corsair Vengeance LPX series. It's pretty cheap and affordable, and it will do exactly what she needs for her build. We've got the Sahara Iced Rainbow CPU cooler. It's around about £10. It's better than the stock cooler. It looks a little bit nicer and adds a bit of bling to the build. Now for the power supply, we went with the Corsair VS 550 watt. That's an active PFC and also 80 plus certified, which means they can put a graphics card in at a later date if they need to. Now we only went with a very small SSD here just for the Windows operating system, and they're going to add in their own hard drive to this at a later date. So we've kept that budget down and kept it to a reasonable amount, which is around about £360. So let's get the motherboard out of the box. Now this is a real entry level motherboard, but it should be okay for what she needs. She just plays Sims 4, so this is exactly what you get inside the box here. Just some basic parts here, driver CD, manual, and also we've got our cable here. Also got a couple of SATA cables and an IO shield in there. So let's pull up the retention lever here and get our CPU in here. Now we went with the AMD 3200G. This is going to be ideal for Sims 4. She can play Sims 4 on this, and if she wants to add a graphics card to this at a later date, she can do. It's got 4 cores and 4 threads, ample for what she needs to do, and I'm pretty sure it'll be enough power for what she wants. So let's get it out the box and get it installed. So I'm just going to whack this into the socket here. It's got a little triangle here, just have to marry that up to the triangle on the motherboard here, or that little dot, and put it in and then pull the retention lever down. That's simple. Let's go ahead and get some RAM on the motherboard here. Now it's only got 2 slots on this board, that's why we went with 16 gigabytes. So we've got this Vengeance here, which is 16 gigabytes of 3200 megahertz speed, which should be ample for what she wants. So let's go ahead and whack that into the slots here. Just pull these little levers back. There's a little notch on here. We just need to marry that up with the notch on the board and then slot it into the groove. And just click it down on either side, and you should hear a clicking noise there, and just slot that into position. Let's go ahead and put the next one in here. There's only 2 slots on this board because this is a real entry motherboard, and also there is no RGB headers or anything like that on the board, so it's real entry level, but it should be good enough for what she wants. She's not going to be overclocking or anything like that. So we've gone with this Ice Rainbow here. It's a cooler from Sahara, and I've used this before, but she wants a little bit of bling, so I thought I'd add this on there just to give her a bit of a bling for the actual build here. Now I've put a bit of compound on here. This is just sort of Arctic silver type compound, and I'm not going to spread this one. I'm just going to leave it as a blob and squidge it out. And these little levers here need to go round the brackets. This is the only time you're going to probably need the brackets on the actual motherboard, because obviously this cooler uses those brackets to latch on. And there we go, that's on. And we can put the cables on at a later date. Very long cables there, as you can see, and the reason for that is because one of them needs to go all the way down the back into the controller box on the back of the case there. Now this already has a bunch of fans already installed on this case. A bit overkill for this build, but I'm going to leave them there so they can upgrade or do what they want at a later date. Just going to put the IO shield in here and clip this into position here. And there we go. Now I'm just going to do the little standoffs here. They need to be moved because this had an ATX motherboard in here, and this one is a very small motherboard. As you can see, this is a micro ATX board. Now I don't normally put micro ATX boards into this type of case because of the gap at the bottom and the sides, but because of the budget, that's what we went with for this build. But normally I would put an ATX board inside that sort of case. So we've got the motherboard in, and now all we need to do is get our power supply in, and this power supply is going to be ample for what she needs. And also if they want to add a graphics card to this at a later date, so a 1650 or something like that, or maybe a 1660 Super, they can do. This should be enough to run that card. The only downfall with these sort of power supplies is, as you can see, you get a big wad of cables there, and we will have to try to tuck them away and hide them somewhere. So that's the only problem with these particular types of power supplies. And you know, it's not too much of a problem here. So we're just going to line these screw holes up here, and then we're going to put the screws in. So there's 4 screws, just screw these in and we should be pretty much good to go from there. Now you can see how many cables are there. Just checking to see the screw hole where it's lined up. It gets a bit dark in this room, but torch comes in handy sometimes. I'm just going to get that screw and put that in, and we can move on to the next stage. Now this build is not a complicated build, pretty straightforward stuff. This is a really good sort of beginner build really, if you've never built PCs before. So I'm just going to get that 24 pin connector into the motherboard here and push that in. It's just a little bit stiff there because I'm coming from a funny angle, but it's in. And I'm going to get the cables tucked through the bottom and then plug them in. So this is the 3.0 connector, and also we've got the USB connector here, which I'm going to plug in. Also got an audio cable there that I need to plug in, and we'll do the front panel connectors as well, which are on the side here. So we'll just get all these in. Now these have to go in a certain way, but you can normally find out how they go in your user manual. If you haven't got one of those, you can go to the manufacturer's website and download the manual from there, and it will tell you the positions they need to go into. Next up, we're going to put the CPU power cable in, and that's from the power supply. You just route that up the back and poke that through the top there. That can be a bit difficult, that's why I removed the fan there, because there wasn't much room. So I'm just going to put the fan back and then screw this back in, and we should be good to go from there. So we're nearly done now. We've not got much more to do on this build. It's a pretty simple build. The fans are already inside the case here, which I did on another build, so it's looking pretty good now. So as you can see here, we've just got to do this last little connector here, which is for our SATA cable for the SSD. I've done a bit of cable management. This is the best you can do with a small micro ATX motherboard inside a case like this. You can see there's a big massive gap at the bottom there, and that shows more cables. There's not a lot you can do here, and again, we was on a tight budget here, so basically what we was doing is trying to find the best bang for the buck, just to get her up and running, and that's the best we can do. So let's move on to the back here. I'm just going to cable tie these rest of these cables that we don't need here. Now you can put a bunch of these cable ties around. I don't want to put too many of them around there because he may need to get access to these a little bit later on for maybe a hard drive he wants to put in there or something like that. So what I'm going to do is literally just tuck these in once I've put the cable tie around them. And this is probably the best place for them, just goes between the power supply and the hard drive cage down the bottom there. There's not much room there, but there's enough room for these here. Now there's no ventilation on that power supply at the back here, so it's safe to do this. There's no airflow coming in from the back there. All that will be drawn in from the bottom, so it's totally safe to do this. And it's the only way you're going to be able to keep this reasonably tidy. Now again, I normally tie these down a lot more better than this, but in case he wants to get access to them, there's not much point in doing that. So I'm just going to tidy up a few more of these cables here, and what we'll do is get the SSD installed here. Now I did try to put the SSD on here, and it works perfectly fine there, but I ended up putting it inside the case because of the cables were starting to bulk out a lot, and there's not a lot of room for cable management. So what we've got to do is screw this in. It's got one little screw, and that should be good enough to go. So I did a bit more tidying up with the cables, and probably this is about as good as it's going to get. There's not much you can do about the cables at the bottom here. This is just due to having a micro ATX motherboard, and if it had a full ATX motherboard you wouldn't have seen as many cables here, but they're all black and it should be okay. Again, you've got to catch up a mustard. 24 pin, there's not much you can do on a budget PSU like that, but other than that, this is the end result. Turned out pretty well. She wanted purple RGB according to Tony, so that's what I've given her, and she's gone purple RGB overload here. We've got 3 fans on the front, one big 140mm fan on the back, and also 240mm on the top, and that RGB CPU cooler. All in all, it turned out pretty well, I think, for a budget build. This is only a 360 odd pound PC build, and they can add in a graphics card at a later date, so we don't need to worry about upgrading the memory because you've got 16GB of RAM in there. And also, if they want to drop in a graphics card, that power supply should be plenty there. Even if they put an RX 570 or RX 580 in there, that should be plenty, but onboard graphics should be good enough for the Sims 4, which is what she plays. Anyway, I hope you enjoy your new PC, Claire. It's been my pleasure building it for you. I'm pretty sure you're going to get plenty of use out of it, and of course, when you get a bit of downtime, you can play all the games you want. Now, as soon as this madness calms down, I'll get this sent out straight away to you, Claire, so don't worry. If it takes too long and we're doing this for a while, then I'll drive it up to you. It's as simple as that. But anyway, I think that's going to be about it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. My name has been Brian from briteccomputers.co.uk. If you have a PC that you want spec'd out and built, then let me know in the comments section below, or even better still, drop on our Discord server and we can have a chat on there, and I'll do my best to build whatever you want, whatever your budget is. Anyway, thanks again. Bye for now. Now, if you haven't subscribed yet, hit the red subscribe button and then hit the bell notification button and click all to be notified when we upload new videos.